Ellen stood inside her mother's empty bedroom, her hands shaking as she held a small, rusted iron key. She looked at the locked wooden box hidden deep inside the dark closet. For 20 years, her mother, Martha, had forbidden anyone from touching this specific box. "If you love me, Ellen, you will never open it," Martha had always whispered with a look of deep fear in her eyes. But yesterday, Martha had been rushed to the hospital, fighting for her life. Ellen knew she shouldn't break her mother's trust, but she desperately needed to know the dark truth. She slowly pushed the old iron key into the lock and turned it. The heavy wooden lid opened with a loud, frightening creak. Inside, there was no jewelry, no money, and no expensive treasures. There was only a faded photograph of a small boy and a legal document from a private adoption agency. Ellen's heart stopped as she read the name on the document. It was her own name. The document stated that Ellen was not Martha's biological daughter. Ellen felt a cold wave of shock and intense anger rush through her entire body. Her whole life had been a lie, built on secrets and false promises. She grew up believing Martha was her real mother, the woman who had raised her in this quiet, poor house. Ellen had worked 2 jobs for 5 years to pay for Martha's expensive medical treatments. She had sacrificed her own dreams of going to university to keep her mother safe and healthy. "How could she do this to me?" Ellen whispered bitterly, tears of deep anger streaming down her face. She clutched the adoption paper in her hand and stormed out of the house into the heavy rain. She drove fast to the city hospital, her mind spinning with painful questions. When she entered the quiet hospital room, Martha looked incredibly small and weak on the white bed. Martha opened her tired eyes and saw the adoption paper in Ellen's trembling hand. A look of absolute terror and deep sadness washed over the old woman's pale face. "Ellen, please, let me explain," Martha whispered, her weak voice shaking with emotion. "You lied to me my entire life." Ellen screamed softly, trying not to wake the other patients. Martha wept silently, reaching out her thin, trembling hand, but Ellen stepped away coldly. "Who am I, Martha? Who are my real parents?" Ellen demanded, her voice sharp and filled with pain. Martha took a deep, painful breath and looked out the rain-covered window. 30 years ago, I worked as a housemaid for a very wealthy, powerful family in the city," Martha began quietly. "The young daughter of that family had a baby out of wedlock, which was a great scandal for them. They did not want the baby, and they planned to leave it at a cold, abandoned orphanage far away." Ellen listened intently, her anger slowly turning into a heavy, suffocating confusion. "That baby was you, Ellen," Martha said, looking directly into her daughter's tearful eyes. "I could not let them throw you away like garbage, because my heart broke for you. So, I stole you away in the middle of a dark, freezing night to save your life." Ellen stood frozen as a new piece of the puzzle fell into place, but her heart remained heavily guarded. "If you saved me, why did you hide it from me?" Ellen asked, her brow furrowing with suspicion. "Because the family searched for us for years, and I was terrified they would take you back," Martha cried out softly. The room fell into a heavy, suffocating silence as Ellen processed the shocking story. But the staircase of secrets was not finished yet, and the tension in the room grew thicker. "There is more, isn't there?" Ellen asked, noticing how Martha avoided her direct gaze. Martha closed her eyes tightly, a fresh wave of tears spilling over her wrinkled cheeks. "The wealthy family eventually found out where we were living when you were 10 years old," Martha whispered. "Their lawyers came to this very town and threatened to put me in prison for kidnapping." Ellen gasped, her hands flying to her mouth as a terrible realization began to dawn on her. "They offered me a choice," Martha continued, her voice cracking with the memory of that ancient pain. They said I could keep you, but only if I signed away my right to ever receive any financial help from anyone. And they demanded a massive amount of money to buy their permanent silence so we could stay together. Ellen remembered their bitter poverty during her childhood, when they often went to sleep without dinner. She remembered Martha working 3 separate cleaning jobs, coming home at midnight with bleeding hands. Martha had never bought a single new dress or a pair of shoes for herself in 20 long years. Now, the final, heartbreaking truth was ready to be completely uncovered. "Where did you get that massive amount of money to pay them, Martha?" Ellen asked, her voice dropping to a whisper. Martha reached under her pillow and pulled out a small, old medical notebook. "I did not have the money, Ellen, so I had to sell something of great value," Martha said, looking down in shame. "I sold one of my kidneys to a private medical clinic to get the cash the family demanded." Ellen felt the ground slide out from under her feet as the world seemed to stop spinning. She finally understood why Martha had become so terribly sick and weak when Ellen was a teenager. It was not a random illness. It was the direct consequence of a brutal sacrifice made to keep Ellen safe. Martha had destroyed her own body and surrendered her health so that she wouldn't lose her daughter. "All these years, I thought I was the one sacrificing my life for you," Ellen sobbed, falling to her knees by the bed. "But you gave up your entire life, your health, and your safety just to be my mother." Martha smiled gently, using her weak fingers to brush the tears away from Ellen's wet face. "You were always my real daughter, Ellen," Martha whispered lovingly. "A mother's love is not defined by blood." Ellen held her mother's fragile hand tightly against her cheek, weeping bitterly for her past anger. The cold wall of pride and resentment around her heart completely shattered into 1,000 pieces. She realized that true wealth and true family are not created by legal documents or biological ties. They are forged in the fires of silent sacrifice, unconditional love, and daily devotion. 2 weeks later, Martha was safely discharged from the hospital, her condition finally stabilizing. Ellen brought her mother back to their small, humble home, but everything felt completely different now. The old wooden box remained on the table, but it no longer held a frightening, dark secret. It held the beautiful proof of a mother's endless, boundless love. Ellen looked at Martha, who was resting peacefully on the sofa under a warm, knitted blanket. She walked over, sat down beside her, and gently wrapped her arms around her mother's fragile shoulders. "We must never judge the people we love before we truly understand the heavy burdens they carry in secret. True love does not boast, it does not demand recognition, and it quietly suffers to protect the innocent. Let us practice deep humility, patience, and gratitude for the silent protectors in our lives. Because a family held together by love is the greatest and most powerful treasure in the entire world."